Okay, welcome to our video for question on paper 1. For question 1, what we're going to do is just give you a quick insight on how to run through how to answer the question. In question 1, you've got the reading section, and in this reading section it's a way for you to start being introduced into the paper. So what you want to do is spend a little bit of time reading through the source and then having a look at the question so you're familiar with it. So when you read the question, you can come back over the source and focus on the relevant part the question is asking you to look at. So with question 1, you've got a 4-mark question. So really you want to be spending roughly a minute a mark. So around about 5 minutes on this one. It says, read again the first part of the source from lines 1 to 5, and you always want to be focused on the bit in bold. So lines 1 to 5 only, just the introduction there. List 4 things about the bird in Alex's nightmare from this part of the source. So the question is really asking you to focus on just the first lines and 4 things that you can learn from the source. So you are being tested on close reading and pulling information out and extracting it into the source. The most important thing here is that you use a full sentence. If you use just a fragment of a sentence or copy a piece of the answer over, unfortunately it does not count. So you may start off with I learned that, or just a sentence indicator just to start your way in, but make sure you use a full sentence. That's really important. So find 4 things. You can put them obviously on lines 1, 2, 3 and 4. So you've got 4 different things that you could say and write them in a full sentence to fully answer successfully the question. If you happen to put 2 correct answers in one of your sentences, both will be rewarded. So if you happen to get one of the questions wrong, but the other question you have 2 answers, it will be rewarded as 2 marks. And then you can move on to question 2. So for question 2, you've got an 8-mark question, and that is going to be requiring a little bit more of your time, so around about 10 to 12 minutes on here, depending on your timings. But make sure that you focus on the bit of text in the box there, the extract, because what they've given you in the question for the paper there is they've copied it over from the insert, so you can focus directly on the source material given to you. So lines 6 to 11 there from the source have been given to you for the extract. So how does the writer use language here to describe the effects of the storm? Really make sure that when you're reading the question, you focus on that bit of the question that is going to directly answer the question, of course. Okay, so the storm. Now for your language features, it's really important here that you find maybe 3 to 4 answers, okay, 3 to 4 correct answers on this one, where you can find the language term, use a quotation to make sure you back up your language term there, your evidence, and then you do the most important part here, which is the analysis, and explain why the writer has used that term. So you may find some language terms in there, but they may not actually have a massive part to play in the story, so you won't be able to analyze it as such to its fullest effect. So make sure when you go through line by line and you find your language feature, make sure that you can underline it or highlight it for your quotation so you can find it, but make sure really that it really does explain the writer's intentions about describing the effects of the storm on this occasion. So you're answering the question directly. All the other information, of course, is irrelevant. It's the bit about the storm in this question that's relevant here. So write your response. You may use for your main point a sentence starter such as the writer uses. So the writer uses a metaphor, for instance. Get your quote in, okay, to prove that you found a relevant part of the text, and then explain the writer's intentions. Again, you may use a starter here, such as this implies that, or this suggests that, this shows that. But what you're trying to do is really explain the effects on the reader, why the writer has used that language term, and the information that's given over to the reader. What do you think the writer is saying, or the character is saying in that part of the story, or what the effect of the storm may be? So make sure that when you've got your language term in and your quotation, you really do focus quite deeply, as best as you can, on analysis. That's where the bulk of the marks are. What you want to do is make sure that your response is clear and relevant. That's our level 3. Clear and relevant response will have all 3 of those pieces of information in there, your point, your evidence, and your explanation. And if it's clear and it's relevant to the question, you've answered it well, and you've done it 3 or 4 times, that will be enough information to get the requisite amount of marks to pass this question. Okay, so if we look at the exemplar response from the exam board for this question then, so what we're going to focus on when we look at exemplar materials, we'll focus on level 3. That will be our clear and relevant response. So we're moving from level 2, which is some understanding, into level 3, which is clear and relevant, and that will be more of an indicator towards our pass mark, of course. So if we look at the beginning there, what the first thing that the writer's been awarded for by the examiner is accurate use of subject terminology. So when the writer is talking about the language used for describing the effects of the storm, the first thing that the student here has used is the semantic field of fear. So semantic field is a language term being a collection of words about one idea. So fear, fearing the storm and the effects of it. Then going on to explain it with our quotations. So we have in quotations in the green there, we have roaring and furious. So we have, as we said before, we are starting to go through our system here of making our points with a language feature and using the evidence from the text itself, which can then lead into the explaining the effect of the language that for the writer's intentions and for the reader. And from there you can see that they've made 2 analytical points. Connotations, the words are connotations, so they suggest dangerous animals that would fear, for example, lions. And another one has done this to make the storm seem dangerous and that it should be fearful of it. So whereas the sentences themselves may require a little bit more clarity, it's a clear and relevant response because they have used the 3 elements that you must do in a clear and relevant response, which is your language feature, a quotation, and explaining those effects. And it really is those explanations which you need to focus on. They should be long, deep, you should be perceptive, and really try to explain what you think the writer is doing, and you will get rewarded for it. If we go down a little bit more, we've got the next language feature there, in the next paragraph, we've got personification. So again, an accurate use of subject terminology. The storm there is lashing, so there's our quotes there. What the student is doing is using what the writer is doing there to explain how they feel about it and the effects on the reader. So when we talk about the effect on the reader, we are literally talking about you as a student answering the paper. You don't have to think about another reader, think about you and what those words mean for you. The more you can explain it, the potential for the higher the mark will be.